Wizards of the USA. Okay, so wizardry and witchcraft operates in the USA. The country is partly strong and partly broken, and it's partly broken due to the witchcraft and wizardry that goes on. Thousands, if not millions, of people in the USA have the devices of wizards and sorcerers in their body, often placed in their either in their ears, their throat, under their arms, between their breasts, in their genitalia area or the genital area, um, in their stomach, in their head, neck area, in their back, other just a lot of places, in their breasts. Um, so anyway, they do this to a lot of infants, right? And many of these devices are made to dishonor the body, disrespect it, right? They're just about dishonoring. And um, the devices are made not only to dishonor, but the devices are made to, um, what I would like to say, the devices are made to dishonor the body and the head, and God as the head, right? You're supposed to have peace of mind, and they want to take that away from you. So they yabber and want people to be suicidal or hate each other or hate their own self. That's one of their ways of trying to dishonor your head or dishonor God as your head. Um, Having your body dishonored, they want you in adultery and fornication, or for you to abuse yourself, cut yourself. All these are ideas inspired by wicked angels. Because Satan hates the human body, obviously he went after Eve. Eve is symbolic of the body of Christ, um, the church, the woman. So he went after them pretty much to kill, steal, and destroy. And so he's still about the same kind of agenda today, just does it in different ways. Now, in the USA, it's with these wizards and sorcerers. And basically, they have these devices. One, I was at to Romans 2, basically to judge someone, right? They want to judge someone. If they don't receive you, they want to judge you, they want to reproach you and cuss you. But if they're doing the same thing, they want to be excused. So you have some level of injustice that goes on. You can see that throughout the history of the USA. Another reason is they don't receive one another. The whole purpose is basically to have one lord themselves over the other. And so amongst the Caucasians, or fair skinned people, or Satan calls them white, they basically, with these devices, you can see divisiveness amongst them, or they don't sincerely receive one another. And then on top of it, if it's a man, they'll give the man certain wizards who help him to have knowledge or to process certain things and basically subjugate women, right? Dishonor women. The women get a certain wizard where they're processing things at a slower pace, or they don't have much knowledge or intelligence. So they treat them like bimbos, or call them bimbos or Barbies, a kind of some dishonor, some level of dishonor and disrespect. So they'll do that with the wizardry and sorcery and witchcraft. Then um, then with the devices, then they have racism. So the fair skinned people are supposed to be here. This is like satanically inspired and man made. So they have them up here, and the brown skinned people, whether it's a man or if they're supposed to be or male or female, they're down here, right? They get the slower wizards. They process things at a slower pace, and the fair skinned men get a certain type of wizard, or the man, um even if it's a man, brown skinned man, the brown skinned female is supposed to be also subjugated, right, disrespected, um and down here is supposed to be not intelligent, right, when the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom anyway. So they come up with this type of society that they would create, and it's satanically inspired, and it's man-made, so it's not real, it's not from God, it's not God doing this. So they have this level, and God led me to Romans 15 verse 6, and I read 5 to 7, and it's on a certain situation where a certain child came out a certain way, and a US citizen, and she was brown skin, and it's a brown skin couple, and basically the wizard had some, I guess, some way of causing the child to come out that way, and it represents the level of disunity and rejection that goes on in the USA. So the people are not like minded, right? We're supposed to have unity of the spirit and the bond of peace, like grow into that. Yes, they came over here for religious freedom, and yes, they fought to be free to self govern, um, right, and not be under a king. Um, but yet they didn't really too much receive one another. Then you have this politics politics that went on, and so you have this unity, right? It's not unity of the spirit, and when that goes on, it's because there's a lack of humility and meekness, right? And so this unity that's satanically inspired, um, uh, goes on, and Satan would want the people to bite and devour each other, and um, s- steal from each other, and not glorify God, exalt self, not glorify God, and murder. Okay, God did work on the USA. It took years, but God worked on the USA to come out of slavery. Unfortunately, they put the people back in slavery using devices. It's not supposed to be that way. So, so you have this issue, this spiritual dynamic that's going on. Okay, so dishonoring of bodies, wanting to judge each other, subjugate each other, steal from each other, murder. And God did lead me to this scripture that says the children, they're given over to murder, or they're murderers. The children are given over to their murderers. Um, and so it's an issue in the USA, and it makes sense why so much things where children are being murdered, mass shootings and all of that. Um, and if the people or the wizards and sorcerers, obviously, if they're not humble and meek, um, that's what's going to happen. Now, coming after their devices. So I guess if they'll murder you if they want back their devices. I guess it's a thing that they probably take out of the bodies, sanitize in something, I'm not too sure, and recycle. Not too sure, possibly. But it's just very strange, right? Then, um, one of the things that I experienced, um, I guess, when they want you to be murdered and they want back their devices, Um, they'll separate you from your God given spouse. They'll send a distraction. Um, One of the things, this lady, um, when I sought God about her, I was led to John 10. All that came before me are thieves and robbers. And um, and so she was sent to try to confound me based on what I was led to by God. So to mess with my mental health, that's pretty much what her purpose was. Because none of that switcheroo stuff goes on in the house of the Lord. And God helped me to understand the spirit behind it, envyings, and the wizards are lusted to envy. So they were doing wizardry and witchcraft, right, to separate me from my God given spouse. So when it was already a sensitive situation due to his heart and whatever he experienced in the past and how he's molded, they just made it even worse with the wizardry and witchcraft and sending this female and then trying to influence the pastor to think a certain way all of a sudden. Just that's what they'll do. And then in March 2017, one of the things that he said, and this is how certain individuals will speak, if they have the devices. It's not talk. He wasn't talking to me, but he said cheating, murder. So basically, that's pretty much one of the reasons why I believe in the USA we have so much domestic violence and people dying at the hands of the females, especially dying at the hands of their spouse. Um, Pastor Francis told me something like he would murder me. So I brought it to the Lord, and I was led to Second Samuel 21. Thank you, Holy Spirit. And the section of verse 15 to 17. Moreover, the Philistines had yet war again with Israel, and David went down and his servants with him and fought against the Philistines. And David waxed faint, and Ishbi Benob, which was of the sons of the giant, the weight of whose spear weighed 300 shekels of brass in weight. He, being girded with the new sword, thought to have slain David. But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, succored him and smote the Philistine and killed him. So basically, to be led to that means that the wizard would want me to get in a state where I am weak, um, and with the witchcraft and wizardry that they would carry on with on the devices and send a message to his head to say, hey, murder her, right? If God led me to this, it's not going to happen. God is going to intercept. The angel of the Lord will step in. It's just not going to happen, right? Because David was weak and Abishai null and void the plan of the Philistine to murder him. So I'm not afraid of being with Christopher Delgado. Not afraid. Um, but if God is not with you, or if you don't know about God, or don't have knowledge of God, or outside of God, that's what's there. Murder, cheating, murder. So this is the type of stuff they will do. Then if they try to separate you from your spouse, but you're still in the house of the Lord, then they'll think of how to get you out of the city. They'll cause your job to shut down, um, or something like that, where you can't stay there any longer, right? Um, they'll come up with things, right, to try to get you out of working with children or out of working in the house of the Lord. Separate you, pardon me, from community, separate you from working for God. So they'll come up with all this things to happen so that you would dishonor your body, so that the church would reject you, or separate you from your God-given spouse, and want you to be marginalized, and all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, if you're well isolated, separated from your family, and I've seen this, there's nobody around, you have no one. If you're out there, they could just pretty much find you, target you, and murder you. There's this one situation this lady in the county jail mentioned, Broward County Jail, that for years she thought she was schizophrenic, and then she learned that they put devices in her, and she showed me her neck area, and basically she shared her story that she was homeless, and while she was homeless, some car would drive by and shot at her. Okay, so this murdering that's going on, it's for a reason. And in the situation with the death of this boy that's been recently reported in the news, it's more likely done, especially with this neck area being missing. um, I mean, if they take it out to investigate what part, um, what happened to this part of his body, why would it go to the next part, person, or wherever, and they can't really know what happened to him if that part of his neck is missing. So it's just strange if they want that part of his body. Maybe they want the device back. That's when I was in Hawaii. Disrespect. When I was in Hawaii, one of the things I noticed, especially being there initially, like, I didn't have so much trouble being at this hostel, but all of a sudden, two individuals, they started to act strange towards me, hostile towards me. They want the camera to be in my face as soon as I wake up out of my sleep, and they woke me up out of my sleep to do that, and saying things, insults, and all this kind of stuff, just strange. And I guess I reached a point where I wasn't in the room for some time, and I guess they didn't anticipate me coming back in the room. I just all of a sudden, not just one person, but both individuals have a flat screen TV. Just kind of strange to me. Another thing I would say is the Lord would lead me to a certain country. And while I was there, right, all of a sudden, being there, this Indian man, and I'll share it, like this Indian man had his back against the wall, and I'm supposed to cross the street. And upon me about to cross the street, he says, nigga. That's an American thing. That's not something that should be going on in Dubai. So it was strange. And he was like a darker brown version than me, and short, and had his back against the wall. Now, I was there for some time, and I was able to understand to some degree what's Emirati, and even the people who decide to be on par with the country, and they're very God fearing, and Pakistani and Indian, they would, it's like they would be on they're with the leader, they're with God, or doing what's good. And one of the things, when I struggled a bit, I experienced being helped. right? And um, they would help me in some way, shape, or form, and I appreciate it. And it was God in them helping me during this point in my life. So even if you go through a hard time, it's like God wouldn't bring you somewhere where he's not going to help you too. But anyway, um, I learned, the Emiratis, they have a certain aura and certain way, and then the people who are there, um, especially if they're God fearing, they have a certain way about them too. Okay, for this Indian man to come out of nowhere and have his back against the wall, that which seems planned, or timed, and says nigga, that's a American thing. So this wizard or sorcerer from America has a problem, right? But I noticed that they can't really carry on the way they carry on with wizardry and sorcery in Hawaii and in, especially here in Florida. So God led me there for numerous reasons, but I believe also that's one of the reasons. So why would he say nigga? I didn't even take offense to it, but from what I experienced, they speak like that because they want you to hate yourself and submit to some level of unrighteousness, yield yourself to some level of unrighteousness, or prostitute yourself, or get in a fight, or just some level of unrighteousness they want you to yield yourself to. They want you to not believe what God says about you and believe what they say. It's satanically inspired to mess with your mental health, just like Satan messed with Eve's mental health in Genesis 3. So he speaks either to deceive, or with a double tongue, or with some corrupt motive, even if he's quoting a scripture. But his whole thing about him is to kill, steal, and destroy, right? So I experienced that. So I would know this person, either they paid him to do it, or he came from the USA, because these wizards and sorcerers, they have money. And um and so they'll do that, if they want to put you in sex trafficking, or if they want to put you in pornography behind your back, or if they want you to leave God, prostitute yourself, or if they want you to be basically murdered, isolated and murdered. They want you to be rejected. That's the type of stuff they would say. Blasphemous things, insults, bitch, slut, oh, nigga, all that kind of stupidness. Misidentifying you. So I know I'm not a nigga. God worked on my identity, helped me to know who I am. And so I didn't receive it, right? I'm not from Nigeria. But they say it in a certain tone and at a certain timing, because it's supposed to bring a certain level of offense. So anyway, this wizard and sorcerer, wicked angel that wants you to be rejected and isolated and murdered and whored or a slave. That's the type of stuff they would do. Witchcraft and speak for a certain spirit to take over. Then they want me to go to Africa. This is what they would tell me, not God. I'm not saying God wouldn't want me to visit Africa or whatever, but they want me to live in Africa. Why would they tell me to go to Africa? Pretty much, people in Africa will sell out for little to nothing if they don't love God, if they're not rooted in the love of God, and if they don't have the knowledge of God, right? Easily give them 200 US dollars and they'll murder somebody. Then I noticed, they would want me to go to Jamaica, go back to Jamaica. They were trying to, but God already instructed me where I should go. And also in Jamaica, they could sell out too, whatever that is. But keep that in mind. So, Emiratis, they tend to have money, you know, are if they're very God fearing, with the little that they have, they're not going to sell out somebody for money. So if Satan can't enter into their heart, what is Satan going to do? A war. And this strange satanically inspired war against Iran, supposed to subjugate Iran, um, because of this whole war, Hezbollah and who, no, what is it? Whatever IRGC support for the Hamas, Hezbollah, and IRGC, something like that, possibly. So during this war, about 2,000 or over 2,000 missiles were sent into the UAE. Why would that happen? I don't believe Iran sent all those missiles, right? And why the UAE? Isn't the whole thing supposed to be Iran against Israel? So it's just strange. So you have mischievous people. You have wizards and sorcerers too. So anyway, if you're a leader and all of a sudden over 2,000 missiles are sent to your country and it's not even that big, and you have to block all these missiles, I could understand if you have a sit down and you start to say, yes, Mr. Trump, you're faithful. Because that would affect you to some degree. I could understand if that happens. Well, Mr. Trump wasn't faithful. He didn't seek God before going to this war. He wasn't meek and humble. He has been advised to seek God before making certain decisions, and Satan inspired has a Hegeset to do this, or his wizard inspired him to do to this war or encourage this war. Mr. Trump went along. So anyway, I asked God for a word on the whole thing concerning this war to confirm, yeah, Satan is, about this war against Iran, and also to affect the UAE, or to affect the UAE. And I'm led to 2 Corinthians 9:7. Right? I was in the section and I'm led to 2 Corinthians 9:7 and 1 Timothy 6:17. So 2 Corinthians 9, verse 7. And I saw where it says, for God loveth a cheerful giver. Every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. And so basically, with the Middle East, especially what I experienced in the UAE and what I've seen on like videos concerning the Saudis, hospitality and giving is a thing. So that's one. Satan doesn't like that. Okay? 2, 1 Timothy 6, verse 17. Charge them that are rich in this world that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. And I saw the part where it says, giveth us richly all things to enjoy. So God blessed that region. Children of Abraham, descendants of Abraham, from humble beginnings. I mean, that's a desert area. You cannot hate them for God blessing them the way they are now. You cannot hate them. So they have things. Satan doesn't like it, and God blessed them. And one of the reasons too, God led me back to where my ancestors, they came from that region, especially um, being part Arab. So God had in his thoughts of peace and not of evil to bless me. Didn't know that while I was there in Dubai. I just did God's will. I just asked God. He was leading me to Arabian in the scriptures. I asked God based on, the knowing my God sister, what I knew about the region in 2007. She was basically asked to teach in Dubai. So I found out about the country, United Arab Emirates, asked if it was the safest place to go, whether I use the word Dubai or the UAE. Um, Either way, Dubai is a city in the UAE. And I asked God if it was safe for me to go there. And I got yes. Did not know all the thoughts that God had for me. Didn't even know um, that the leader was a billionaire. I found out through the sit down he had with Mr. Trump. I didn't even look into the leader being. I did not know. But that's how God thinks. That's why you got to walk by faith and not by sight. The natural man don't receive the spiritual things or the spirit of God. So if God says go there, they'll come up with the excuse, oh, terrorists, oh, family's not there, oh, this, oh, that. They'll come up with excuses, and it's good that you take steps of faith. The whole thing with Bishop Russell preaching, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, that was for Christopher Delgado and I. And so he was supposed to have a level of Abrahamic faith, but with unbelief in his heart and him being natural in this area like a King Solomon. Um, and when I saw God, if he's like if Christopher Delgado is supposed to be, how would God feel if he's with Simona or another woman besides me or instead of me? Obviously, I'm led to 1 Kings 11 verse 9, and in that Solomon refused to listen to God after God went to him twice. So he was a natural man in that sense and went about not denying himself of what he wanted, not being humble in that sense, but he was humble and know he needed God to govern the people and receive God's wisdom in that sense. So you have that dynamic going on. But you see how it's good to walk by faith and not by sight? Just take that step. You don't even know what God has ahead, why he brought you there, why he would lead me there. But anyway, all these things, because while I was there in Dubai, I didn't even know it was one of the wealthiest countries in the world or one of the safest. I just asked God if it was safe to go because, with our history over here, 9/11 and all of that. So I'm there and I'm in there at the airport and, whatever my situation was, and I didn't even know it was one of the wealthiest countries. I didn't know all of God's thoughts that he had for me. But anyway, adversary doesn't like it, come up with this war. Right? And when the adversary started to say, oh, you can't go to Dubai now because there's this war against Iran, God led me to Acts 5:38 to 39. Basically, if they're fighting against God's will, they're fighting against God, right? So that's how the wizards, pardon me, that's how Satan and the wizards operate, right? And if you operate in unbelief and you are a natural man, you don't receive the things of the Spirit of God or the spiritual things, you will fight against God too, which makes sense why one day Christopher was like this in March, then the next day he's saying, uh, one day he's saying, I love you, and expressing himself, and God led me to a word on that, it's the will of God. Then the next day, I love you, but I can't be with you, which we shouldn't have parted because of him saying that. God led me to a devotion on like a Christian married couple that had an argument, and then they felt a certain way about each other, but the husband said to pray, and then after they both prayed, their hearts were softened. And so I asked God what I should have done, and I was led to that devotion. So God was not interested in us parting, right? But anyway, the wizardry and witchcraft and his unbelief and the way he thinks things are supposed to go, that's pretty much why we're not together. But he's still my husband as long as he's alive and as long as I'm alive. Anyway, so going back to the UAE, the blessing, and God blessed the UAE. So, um, another thing I'm led to is Isaiah 56, verse 1, which would describe the wizards and the sorcerers and them doing this war. And so I would read Isaiah 56, verse 1. And basically, it says, is it 11? Pardon me. 11. Isaiah 56, verse 11. Yea, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look to their own way, every one for his gain from his quarter. Now, Venezuela, even before they went to wars, we were supposed to be going, I mean, the whole issue is supposed to be drug trafficking. And then, before the US got there, they were talking about, Mr. Maduro mentioned in a video, if you want to get some oil, or if you want some oil or whatever it is, I guess to Mr. Trump or his administration, Chevron, he was mentioning Chevron or whatever it was. But they get there and then they're like taking over the oil, right? Now Iran, I guess, the Strait of Hormuz and this oil, and then all of a sudden 20% toll is supposed to be going on. And so there's a reason behind some these wars. And then there's a pattern too going into the Middle East, considering, you know, um, Iraq, and then 5 months um, after they found, I guess, Gilgamesh, and there's this talk, in Iraq too, in the past, and about the recreation of Babylon, and then how these little parts of these things that they found, occult magic was said to be there, whatever. There's a purpose, to have a wicked angel or a spirit reconstituted in a body and all that kind of stuff. And then Iran has 2,000 years of history and was connected to Babylon too. So, greedy dogs, we have that problem, wanting something in the Middle East. So they come up with these, there's a purpose behind it, and it's satanically inspired. So this is what the sorcerers are about. And remember, the sorcerers, what I can say about them is that being led to, my house is a house of prayer, or shall we call a house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. They're the reasons why the house of God and even the temple of God and people have experienced so much loss, theft. They'll steal your man, they'll steal whatever, steal your car, steal whatever. Right? Whether they're doing it via witchcraft or wizardry or however, they're behind it. So you got to be aware of these dynamics. Okay. And then another thing I saw about these wizards being led to First John 2, section of 2 and 3. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eye and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. The wizards are about that life, right? Lust, eyes, people, hidden surveillance to steal, kill, and destroy. Then I was led to, at one point, murderer. So they're murderers. Then I was led to, what else I was led to? Seduce you. So they are behind adultery and fornication and whoredom going on. And antichrist, right? So they're not with God, right? And what I have been led to, and that's concerning me, ye have overcome the wicked one. That's in First John 2, a part of 14. So they had an agenda to murder me. And basically they did, I sought God about whether there would be a wedding ceremony. If I go to the UAE, will there be a wedding ceremony between Christopher Delgado and I? And I'm led to Revelation 18:23-24. Basically, the voice of